I never thought a kid's words could unravel a life like a loose thread on a cheap suit. But there I was, fork halfway to my mouth, staring at my niece Riley across the polished mahogany table in my sister's Tribeca penthouse. "No one would notice if you disappeared," she said, her voice flat as a Jersey turnpike, those big blue eyes, mirror images of her mother's, boring into me like she was reciting a grocery list. Her mom, my sister Victoria, froze mid-sip of her Sauvignon Blanc, the glass trembling just enough to catch the light from the skyline bleeding through the windows. That's when I smiled, slow and sharp, and said, "Oh, honey, they would. And that's why I'm going to make sure they do." It had been 5 years since I'd last sat at a table like this. 5 years of concrete walls and the stink of desperation in Rikers. All because Victoria needed a scapegoat for her little Wall Street indiscretion, cooking the books at her hedge fund to the tune of $20 million. I'd taken the fall, of course. Signed the plea deal like a good little sister, because blood's thicker than ink, right? Wrong. I'd trusted her, covered for her since we were kids scraping by in that Roach Motel in Queens, dreaming of Manhattan lights while Dad drowned in cheap whiskey and Mom pretended the bruises didn't show. Victoria clawed her way up. Harvard MBA, power lunches with senators, a corner office overlooking the Hudson, while I hustled as her consultant, the shadow girl who made the dirty deals disappear. Until one didn't. The feds came knocking on a rainy Tuesday, badges flashing like bad omens. Victoria was in the Caymans by dawn, wiring money to offshore accounts, leaving me holding the smoking gun, a forged signature on a transfer doc that looked an awful lot like mine. "It'll be fine, Luna," she'd whispered over a burner phone from her yacht. "Just play along. I'll get you out in 2." 2 turned to 5, and by the time parole scraped me free, I was 38 with a record longer than my patience and a grudge that could level skyscrapers. Now here we were, reuniting, over seared scallops and small talk about Riley's ballet recitals, like the elephant in the room wasn't trumpeting betrayal. Victoria had aged like fine wine, Botox-smooth skin, blonde highlights that screamed money, but her eyes darted, guilty little fish in a designer pond. Riley, though, that kid was a grenade with the pin half pulled. 12 going on 40, wise beyond her years from overhearing too many boardroom whispers and too few bedtime stories. She'd always been Victoria's mini-me, but tonight, there was something feral in her stare, like she'd inherited the family venom without the polish. "You look different, Aunt Luna," Riley said, twirling her fork in her pasta like she was plotting a hit. "Harder, like those women in the movies who come back from the dead." Victoria choked on her wine. "Riley." I leaned back, the leather chair creaking under me, and let the silence stretch like taffy. "Prison'll do that to a girl. Strips away the bullshit. Leaves you with just the bones of who you really are." My voice was steady, laced with that Brooklyn edge I'd never quite shaken, even after all the elocution lessons Victoria forced on me to fit in at her galas. Riley didn't blink. "Good. Mom says you're like a ghost now, haunting us." Victoria's fork clattered against her plate. "That's enough, young lady. Apologize to your aunt." But Riley just shrugged, popping a cherry tomato into her mouth, juice staining her lips red. "It's true. No one talks about you anymore. Not at school, not at Daddy's office. You're forgettable." The word landed like a sucker punch, but I saw it for what it was, a test. Kids like Riley didn't spout off without rehearsal. Victoria had poisoned the well, drip by drip, turning me into the family boogeyman. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't dinner. This was reconnaissance. They thought I was broken, a spent cartridge they could kick under the rug. But I'd spent those 5 years not just surviving, but scheming. Reading every law book in the library, hacking into the prison Wi-Fi with a smuggled burner, shout out to Big Tina and laundry, piecing together the threads Victoria thought she'd buried. I set my glass down, the clink echoing like a gavel. "Forgettable, huh? Well, let's fix that." I turned to Victoria, whose face had gone the color of yesterday's latte foam. "Starting with you, sis. How's that promotion treating you? Senior VP now, right? Must be nice, climbing over all those little people without getting your Louboutins dirty." Her lips thinned into a slash. "Luna, please. Not in front of Riley." "Oh, honey," I said, echoing Riley's drawl. "In front of Riley is exactly where this needs to start." I pulled a slim folder from my purse, yellowed printouts, redacted emails I'd charmed out of a former colleague via anonymous tips, and slid it across the table. The top sheet, A grainy photo of Victoria boarding a private jet in Miami, timestamped the day after my arrest. Riley snatched it first, her eyes widening like saucers. "Mom? What's this?" Victoria lunged, but I was faster, pinning the folder with my palm. "Tell her, Vic. Or I will. About the money. The lies. How your precious fund almost tanked because you couldn't keep your greedy fingers out of the cookie jar." The room went tomb silent, save for the distant honk of taxis 30 floors below. Victoria's chest heaved, her diamond necklace catching the light like a noose. "You don't understand. It was a mistake. A one-time thing. A mistake that cost me half a decade." I shot back, my voice dropping to that low growl I perfected in group therapy, the one that made even the toughest inmates pause. "And now? You're golden. New husband, trust fund for the kid, while I'm out here scraping ramen and odd jobs. But here's the kicker. I didn't come empty-handed." I reached into my purse again, this time pulling out a tiny USB drive, matte black and innocuous as a hotel keycard. It's everything. The offshore logs, the witness payoffs, even the little love notes you sent to that SEC investigator to keep him sweet. One click, and it's emailed to every major outlet from the Post to Bloomberg. "Your empire crumbles, Vic Poof." Riley's gaze flicked between us, a slow smile creeping across her face. "Not innocent. Not anymore. Do it, Aunt Luna. Make her disappear." Victoria's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist hard enough to bruise. "You bitch. After everything I did for you. Everything you did to me." I corrected, wrenching free. "And now it's payback time." That night, as I rode the subway back to my crapsack studio in Bushwick, graffiti-scarred walls and a mattress that smelled like regret, I replayed the scene on loop. Riley's words weren't just cruel, they were prophetic. No one had noticed me gone for 5 years. Friends ghosted, lovers scattered like roaches at dawn. Even our mom, bless her chain-smoking soul in that assisted living home upstate, sent cards with Victoria's handwriting, all platitudes and no questions. I was the invisible woman, the family skeleton they'd stuffed in the closet with the holiday ornaments. But invisibility? That's a superpower if you wield it right. Over the next weeks, I ghosted through Victoria's world like a specter in stilettos. Fake credentials got me into her gym, Equinox on the Upper East Side, where hedge fund vipers sweated out their sins. I bumped into her assistant at a coffee shop, all wide-eyed sympathy and leading questions. Piece by piece, the puzzle assembled. Victoria wasn't just VP. She was neck-deep in something bigger, darker. A black market consortium peddling experimental tech, neural swaps, they called it. Not full-body switches like in those B-movies, but soul-deep transfers. Consciousness uploaded, downloaded into fresh meat. For the right price, a failing CEO could wake up in a 20-year-old model's skin, debts and scandals left behind like yesterday's trash. It was genius, in a sociopathic way. Victoria's fund bankrolled the R&D, hidden in shell companies registered in Delaware. And the test subjects? The desperate, the disposable, ex-cons, undocumented workers, kids from the foster system who'd signed away their futures for a shot at reinvention. I'd found the whistleblower docs buried in a dark web forum, encrypted PDFs that detailed the procedure, a cocktail of nanites and EM fields, frying synapses just enough to scramble the signal, then rebooting in a donor body. Success rate? 50-50. The failures? Vegetable states, or worse, trapped in limbo, aware but voiceless. My blood ran cold reading it. This wasn't sci-fi. It was the logical endpoint of American ingenuity, monetizing mortality, one upload at a time. And Victoria? She wasn't just an investor. She was a client. Her consultations with the lead neuroscientist, a sleazy doc named Harlan from MIT dropout days, pointed to a swap in her future. Escape hatch for when the SEC net finally closed. I should have gone to the feds right then, blown it wide open. But revenge isn't clean, folks. It's a greasy burger from a food truck at 2 a.m., messy, satisfying, and liable to give you heartburn. Instead, I decided to play their game. Infiltrate, impersonate, incinerate from the inside. Controversial? Hell yes. I'd be breaking a dozen laws just to breathe the same air as that tech. But sitting on my hands got me 5 years. Action. That was the only currency I had left. First step, the mark. I needed leverage on Harlan. Turned out, the doc had a weakness for blondes and bourbon. A quick bleach job, a slinky dress from the thrift on Knickerbocker, and I was sipping Macallan at his favorite speakeasy in the village, accidentally spilling my drink on his lap. Whoops, I purred, dabbing with a napkin like it was foreplay. Let me make it up to you. He bit, hook, line, and sinker. By the third round, he was spilling more than scotch, lab protocols, security codes, even the donor roster. It's revolutionary, doll, he slurred, breath hot on my neck. Eternal youth for the 1%. Your sister? She's prime candidate. Stressed exec swaps into a fresh grad student shell. Boom, new life, no baggage. I laughed, throaty and low, while my mind raced. Sounds risky. What if it goes tits up? His eyes glazed. It won't. Not with my calibrations. By dawn, I had his keycard cloned on a 3D printer in a hackerspace in Bed-Stuy, and a date for the tour. But as I stumbled home, heels clicking on cracked sidewalks, Riley's voice echoed. No one would notice. She was right. This dive into the abyss. It was on me, solo. No backup, no safety net. Just a woman with a felony and a fire in her gut. The lab was tucked in a nondescript warehouse in Red Hook, the kind of place that smelled like rust and regret, with the East River lapping at its bones like a bad memory. Harlan met me at the loading dock, tie askew, coffee breath wafting. Victoria's pet project, he bragged, swiping us through blast doors that hummed like angry bees. Inside, sterile white corridors, humming servers stacked like Jenga towers, and glass-walled chambers where bodies floated in saline tanks, faces slack as wax figures. Donors, he explained, gesturing lazily. Comatose cases, mostly. Ethical gray area. But hey, progress demands sacrifice. My stomach twisted, but I played cool, nodding like I gave a damn. We hit the core room, a surgical suite straight out of a cyberpunk fever dream, with neural helmets like chrome crowns and monitors scrolling brainwave fractals. The swap chair, Harlan said, patting the central rig. Upload here, download there. Seamless, if the sync holds. I fingered the drive in my pocket, the one with his emails to Victoria, time-stamped affairs with underlings, enough to bury him under RICO charges. Show me how it works. He hesitated, then shrugged. Why not? For science. Strapped in, the helmet clamped down, cold gel oozing against my scalp. Harlan punched keys, monologuing about qubits and quantum entanglement like a TED Talk reject. Relax, Luna. It'll feel like a nap. But as the fields ramped up, a whine building in my ears, panic clawed in. This wasn't leverage. This was suicide. What if I ended up in one of those tanks, a ghost in the machine? Harlan's face blurred behind the visor, smirking. Sweet dreams. Then, nothing. A void, blacker than a power outage in the projects. No pain, no light. Just the slow seep of awareness, like waking from anesthesia with someone else's thoughts tangled in yours. When I woke, it wasn't my eyes that fluttered open. Soft hands, manicured nails painted coral. A mirror across the room showed Victoria's face staring back. High cheekbones, full lips twisted in confusion. I was in her body. The swap had fired, but not as planned. Harlan's betrayal? Or Victoria's? I flexed fingers that weren't mine, feeling the silk blouse shift against skin that smelled of Chanel No. 5. The door hissed open. Harlan, wiping sweat, grinned. Perfect sync. Welcome to your new life, Victoria. I sat up, voice coming out in her honeyed drawl. What the hell did you do? He laughed. Your sister's idea. She wanted you. Handled. Permanent vacation in a donor shell. But the calibrations glitched. You're in hers now. She's wherever. Rage boiled, hot and unfamiliar in this borrowed frame. I lunged, but he was faster, jabbing a syringe into her neck. Sedative bloom, world tilting. As darkness claimed me again, I vowed. If I woke up, it wouldn't be as prey. Waking up strapped to a gurney in a holding cell, Victoria's holding cell, all chrome and cold efficiency, felt like hitting the asphalt after a 12-story fall. My head throbbed with echoes of her memories. Power plays in boardrooms, Riley's first steps, the metallic tang of fear when the feds had circled close. It wasn't just a swap, it was an invasion. Her neural ghosts whispered in the corners of my mind, fragments of deals I'd never struck, lovers I'd never betted. I was Luna in a Victoria's suit, puppeteering a life built on lies. Harlan poked his head in an hour later, syringe in hand like a goddamn olive branch. Rise and shine, VP. We've got a cover story. You blacked out from stress. Migraine, maybe. Your sister's en route from wherever we stashed her shell. I sat up slow, testing the waters. Her body's grace was effortless, like slipping into heels that fit perfect. Where is she? The real her. He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. Donor tank. Coma grade. Reversible, if we tweak the fields. But Victoria's orders were clear. Erase the loose end. You were getting too close. Victoria? I echoed, her voice purring the name like silk over razor wire. Were you covering your ass? His smirk faltered. Look, this tech's gold. Billions in the pipeline. Your sister's the front woman, but I'm the brain. One whistleblower, and poof, back to adjunct pay at some state school. I let the silence stretch, channeling every ounce of Victoria's Ice Queen vibe. Untie me. He did, hesitant, and that's when I struck. Elbow to the throat, knee to the groin, moves Big Tina taught me in the yard. Harlan crumpled, gasping like a fish on the docks. I zip-tied him with cords from the wall panel, then rifled his pockets. Master key fob. Phone unlocked with a passcode I guessed from her memories. Riley's birthday, sentimental fool. The lab was a maze, but Victoria's imprint guided me. Service elevators to the donor wing, where rows of pods hummed like overworked AC units. I found her, in pod 17, my old body, gaunt and pale under the lights, tubes snaking like four vipers. Hitting the release cycled the saline, alarms blaring soft as a lullaby. I dragged the shell to a med bay, hooked it to monitors, and initiated a partial reboot. If the swap could glitch once, it could glitch back. But as the brainwaves flickered, doubt crept in. This body, Victoria's, felt right. Stronger, sharper, doors opening with a nod instead of a fight. Why go back to Luna's baggage when I could burn it all as her? The thought was seductive, controversial as hell. Steal her life outright. Raise Riley as mom. Let the world think Luna vanished for good. No one would notice, right? Shaking it off, I silenced the alarms and slipped out into the Brooklyn night, her Mercedes purring like a contented cat. First stop, the penthouse. If Victoria had planned this, Riley knew. Kids always did. The doorman waved me up, no questions, just a tip of the hat. Inside, the place was a shrine to excess. Abstract art screaming money, a sub-zero fridge stocked with organic kale and Veuve. Riley was curled on the sectional, iPad glowing, binging some true crime doc. She looked up, casual. Mom? You're home early. I dropped the keys on the marble island, watching her. Yeah, kiddo. Rough night at the lab. She set the tablet aside, eyes narrowing. Not the wide innocence from dinner, but something calculating. You look weird. Like you're wearing a mask. Smart girl. I sat beside her, close enough to smell the strawberry shampoo. Remember what you said about your aunt? About disappearing? Riley's face shuddered. You told her to shut up. I did. But what if I agreed? I leaned in, Victoria's perfume masking the lie. What if no one did notice? Would that be okay? She fidgeted, picking at a loose thread on the couch. Aunt Luna's mean. She scares people. Yells on the phone about money. Does she? I pressed, gentle as a vice. Or does someone tell you that? Riley's lower lip quivered, but her eyes stayed dry. Mom says she's unstable. From jail. That she might hurt us. There it was, the poison distilled. Victoria hadn't just framed me. She'd rewritten the narrative for her daughter, turning protector into predator. My fists clenched, her nails, digging crescents into palms that weren't scarred from prison brawls. And what do you think, Riley? Deep down. A beat. Then soft. I think she's sad. Like Dad was before he left. Her dad, Victoria's ex, the Wall Street golden boy who'd bailed when the fun scandal simmered. Another thread in the web. I pulled her into a hug, awkward in this body, but she melted in, small and trusting. Smart kid. Smarter than your mom gives you credit for. Over the next days, I settled into the skin like a spy in enemy territory. Mornings, power smoothies and Peloton sessions, her body lean and unyielding. Afternoons, board meetings where I nodded through jargon, subtly sabotaging. Leaking memos to competitors via anonymous drops, the kind of digital graffiti that itched without immediate bite. Evenings, tucking Riley in, reading chapters from The Giver, planting seeds of doubt about Mom's long hours, her secrets. Victoria's husband, fiancé now, some tech bro named Ethan with a man bun and a Bitcoin fortune, didn't suspect a thing. Dinner at Le Bernardin, his hand on my thigh under the table, and I played along, laughing at his NFT rants while plotting how to tank his portfolio. Controversial? Sleeping with the enemy, literally, in a stolen body? Yeah, it twisted my gut like a bad burrito. But information was foreplay, and Ethan spilled plenty. Whispers of SEC probes, Harlan side hustles, even a family trust siphoning fund assets to the swap consortium. One night, post-coital in the king bed overlooking the harbor, he murmured, "You're different lately, Vic Fiercer." I like it. I traced his chest, memorizing scars. Life's too short for half measures, babe. By week 2, the cracks showed. Harlan vanished, my doing, a suicide note on his laptop blaming pressures, and the lab went dark, servers wiped clean. Victoria's memories clued me in, backups in a Cayman vault, accessible via biometrics. I flew private, her face getting me through customs like butter, and torched the lot, digital pyre from a beach cabana, pina colada in hand. Back in NYC, the heat rose. Reporters sniffed around the penthouse, vultures and Brooks Brothers. Victoria's boss called, voice tinny over speaker. "We need to talk about irregularities, Victoria." I scheduled the meeting, then canceled via proxy. Me, the real me, in my old shell, which I'd smuggled to a safe house in Crown Heights, tended by a nurse bought with laundered cash. The partial reboot worked. Luna stirred, weak but wired, ready for the endgame. The climax brewed on a stormy Thursday, thunder rumbling like God's own hangover. I arranged the reunion at the lab ruins, red hook, rain-slicked and spectral. Riley in tow, hood up against the drizzle, oblivious to the storm. "Why here, Mom? It's creepy. Family business, kiddo. Loose ends." Victoria, trapped in my body, arrived chained in the back of a rented van, driven by a goon I'd hired off Craigslist. She looked wrecked, my old frame gaunt, eyes wild with disorientation. "What the fuck, Vic? This your idea of a joke?" I stepped from the shadows, her own face smiling back at her. "Not a joke, sis. A mirror." Her. My. Eyes widened, comprehension dawning like a gut punch. "Luna? You bitch. Get me out of this meat suit." Riley gasped, clutching my sleeve. "Aunt Luna? In Mom's body." The kid pieced it faster than a Times crossword. I knelt, rain matting her hair. "Yeah, honey. Surprise." Victoria thrashed against the restraints. "You don't get it. This was mercy. You'd rot out there, broke, bitter. I gave you a way out." "Mercy?" I laughed, bitter as black coffee. "You stole my life. Framed me for your greed. And now? I'm wearing your skin, and it fits perfect." The goon hauled her to the swap chair, Harlan's ghost machine humming back to life on auxiliary power. I strapped her in, deliberate, while Riley watched, silent witness. Decision time. Vic swap back, face the music. Or stay as me. Disappear into the system. Just another ex-con nobody notices. Her voice cracked, my old timbre raw. "Riley, tell her. Tell her I'm your mom." Riley stepped forward, small hand on the console. "You lied to me. About everything." Aunt Luna didn't yell. She sent cards. You threw them away. Victoria's face crumpled. "Baby, please." But Riley hit the button, fields whining to life. Controversial as hell, letting a 12-year-old pull the trigger on her own mother's fate. But kids see truth adults bury, and Riley's eyes held no mercy, just clarity. The swap fired. Agony ripped through. Hers, mine, ours. Synapses screaming as souls collided like freight trains. I blacked out, waking in my old body. Aches familiar as an ex's grudge. Victoria slumped in hers, gasping, whole again. But as sirens wailed distant, my anonymous tip to NYPD, I realized the cost. Riley hugged me, whispering, "You're not forgettable anymore." We walked out into the rain, Victoria's empire crumbling behind us. Justice? Or just another betrayal? The line blurred, debatable as a hung jury. The fallout hit like a nor'easter off the Atlantic. Fierce, unrelenting, scattering debris for blocks. Victoria's arrest made the front page of the Post. Hedge fund heiress busted iron body swap scam. The details blurred the sci-fi into scandal. Black market neural tech, embezzled millions funneled to mad scientists, test subjects awakening in wrong lives like a dystopian Freaky Friday. Me? I was the whistleblower ant, painted heroic in the spin. Ex-con turned Avenger, trading barbs with Anderson Cooper on CNN, my face softened by makeup artists who cooed about resilience. But glory's a fickle mistress, especially when you're wearing yesterday's sins. Back in my body, scarred knuckles, faint stretch marks from a youth spent waitressing doubles. It felt like slipping into ill-fitting jeans after a bender. Strong in places, loose in others. The safe house nurse had done wonders. For drips, physical therapy, even a therapist who billed Victoria's frozen assets. But the memories lingered, Victoria's ghosts haunting my dreams. Her first boardroom win. The thrill of that first illicit wire transfer. The quiet terror of holding Riley as a newborn. Whispering promises she couldn't keep. Riley crashed with me in the Crown Heights walk-up, a two-bedroom with peeling wallpaper, and a super who fixed leaks with duct tape. Child services hovered, but the lawyers, hired from the settlement pot, kept them at bay. Temporary guardianship, they called it, pending Victoria's trial. Riley adapted like a feral cat to kibble. School in the morning, public, with uniforms that itched, homework at the Formica table, evenings binging Stranger Things while I microwaved Totino's pizzas. "This is better," she said one night, ketchup on her chin. "No more pretending." I ruffled her hair, heart twisting. "Yeah? No penthouse views." She shrugged. "Views are lonely. It's real. Real." The word mocked me. Ethan's empire tanked first. His crypto bets soured when I accidentally forwarded those sabotaged memos to his board. Divorce papers hit Victoria's cell like confetti. Alimony waived in exchange for silence. Our mom upstate. She visited once, chain-smoking Virginia Slims on the fire escape, squinting at me like I'd grown a second head. "You too. Switched? Like the devil's work." "Something like that, Ma." She patted my hand, leathery from years at the diner. "Well, don't let it change you, Luna. You're the good one. Always were. Lies we tell ourselves, right? The good one." I'd orchestrated a kidnapping, impersonated my sister, let a child doom her mother to a 15-to-life bid at Bedford Hills. Controversial didn't cover it. Ethically bankrupt, the tabloids crowed, ethicists on MSNBC decrying the moral quagmire of vengeance tech. Protests outside the courthouse, one side chanting for victim rights, the other for neural privacy. Me? I dodged the cameras, head down, Riley's hand in mine. The twist came on a muggy August afternoon, heat rising off the asphalt like bad karma. I'd scored a gig, freelance consultant for a nonprofit auditing corporate fraud, ironic as hell, when the mail slot clattered. Envelope, no return address, grainy photos, my handwriting on the back. Look closer. Inside, surveillance stills from the lab night. Me, in Victoria's body, strapping her down. Riley at the console. But the angles. Wrong. Time-stamped before the swap. My stomach dropped like the 7 train at rush hour. I called in sick, barricaded with Riley at a diner on Myrtle, nursing cokes while she doodled in a spiral. The photos told a story I'd buried deep. Not just glitch, but design. Harlan's notes, smuggled in the envelope, detailed a precinct protocol. Memories implanted, loyalties flipped. Victoria hadn't planned to erase me. I'd approached her months back, post-parole, begging for a piece of the swap pie. "Let me in," I'd pleaded over encrypted chat. New start. For both of us. Bullshit. The logs showed me initiating, me suggesting the frame job reversal, plant evidence to spring her clean while I took the donor dip. But why? The deepest cut. A psych eval from Rikers, forged but convincing, diagnosing delusional fixation. I'd cracked in the joint, paranoia twisting sisterly love into obsession. Victoria covered for me. The embezzlement was my screw-up, a desperate grab to fund mom's chemo. She'd taken the heat indirectly, but I'd flipped it, gaslit her into the scapegoat role, then stolen her skin to fix it. Truth reversed. I was the villain, the mountebank with the cunning plan. Riley's words, not prompted by Vic, but by me, whispered in a secret aunt talk, weeks before dinner, testing loyalties. Say it to her face. I'd coached, thinking it'd fracture them. Instead, it sealed my descent. Riley looked up from her sketch. A family portrait, 3 figures under a fractured skyline. "What's wrong, Aunt Luna?" I folded the photos, throat tight. "Just ghosts, kiddo." The ending? Debatable as a Supreme Court split. I could confess, torch my fragile normalcy, join Vic behind bars, let Riley foster out to strangers. Justice, raw and redemptive. Or bury it deeper, raise her as my own, let the swap scars fade into urban legend. Happy, in a twisted, American dream way, scrappy survivors in a city that chews legends and spits bones. I chose the berry. For Riley. For the woman in the mirror who wasn't quite Luna, wasn't quite Vic, but something fiercer. We moved upstate, near Mom's home, a fixer-upper with a yard, apple trees heavy with promise. Victoria wrote from prison, letters in her looping script, forgive or forget. I burned them, one by one, watching flames dance like neural fields. Nights, Riley sleeps sound. No more nightmares of disappearing ants. Me? I stare at the ceiling, wondering if the swap ever fully reversed, or if we're all just echoes, swapped souls in a world that doesn't notice the difference. No one would, after all. But in the quiet, I do. And that's the revenge that sticks, the kind that haunts you long after the cuffs come off.